As the Father has loved me, Jesus says, so I have loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept the Father's commandments and abide in his love. I have said these things to you, so that my joy may be complete in you, and that your joy may be complete. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. No one has greater love than this, to lay down their lives for one's friends. You are my friends. If you do what I command, I do not call you servants any longer, because the servant does not know what the master is doing, but I have called you friends, because I have made known to you everything that I have heard from my Father. You did not choose me, but I chose you, and I appointed you to go and to bear fruit, fruit that will last, so that the Father will give you whatever you ask in him in my name. I'm giving you these commands so that you may love one another. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
We hear it again and again, that it is love. It is love at the heart of the gospel. Love at the heart of Jesus' ministry. Love at the very heart of God, written into the fabric of creation. But we use and we hear that word so much that it can almost roll off our tongue too easily. It carries so much weight, and yet it is also so misunderstood so often. What love looks like and feels like for one person does not feel loving to another. The teachings about love throughout the Bible, again and again, and yet for some reason we just seem to struggle to grasp it. What does love mean? I wish I could say that by the end of this sermon that we would have that all cleared up, but I won't make that promise because it's not going to happen. But I do want to talk about some of the facets of love so that we might understand more fully what's it mean to be in relationship with one another and with God, and love of self and love of neighbor, all those things that we have talked about. But in this passage, Jesus says, no greater love does someone have than to lay down their life for their friends. And so we understand this sense of loving at its heart about self-giving, almost to the point of giving our whole self up. But is that, in fact, what Jesus is getting at? We know and hear the sermons, right? Loving others is about serving others. But that's not what Jesus is talking about here. We say we can show love to the world by serving the world. But notice what he says is, you aren't my servants. You aren't servants. You are friends. And so it is intended to change the relationship. Think about this for a moment. What would it look like if we sort of changed our understanding of mission to us helping out, to figuring out how to be in relationship with others, so that all of the resources of our communities were shared in a way that were just? What would it mean to move our mission relationships away from transactional? I have something, you need something, praise God. What could mission look like if it wasn't defined by how much money we give away? What if mission was defined not by how many volunteer hours we give, or how many houses have been built, or how many meals have been served? All of those are good things. People need housing and food and money. But Jesus is talking about something much deeper here, and I think challenging the church to go deeper than instead of saying on the surface. And I'm not talking Westminster specific, friends. I am talking the church of America. We are really good at doing mission and staying on the surface when it comes to relationships. It's just part of our church culture. It's just written in many ways into the fabric of our congregations. What Jesus is talking about, though, here is about making friends, about being in relationships, so that if some have more and some don't, that it's just natural that you share. It's what you do in a household, or at least what parents make kids do in a household. But friendships, as Jesus says, are built on love, not on power. Servants and master are about power. Friendships are about mutuality, which I have come to learn very early on in my ordained ministry, that the church was not always good about building deeper friendships. I want to share a story with you. In the first year where I was an ordained minister in a church in Tennessee, I was surprised to find that these two older gentlemen who had been friends for over 30 years really didn't know much about one another at all. They didn't know where one another had grown up. They didn't know how many siblings they had. And these two friends ate together and regularly played golf together. But their friendship seemed to be limited to remaining on the surface. Now, there's probably lots of reasons for that, but the reason I share this is in the first few weeks and months when I was there, I was learning to get to know some of the folks in the congregation, and so we, in small groups, would do get-to-know-you games. Yes, I made the older folks in the congregation sort of do those things, and they weren't always happy about it, but I'm thankful they played along because it helped me get to know them a little bit better. What was fascinating is that when doing this, the number of people that said, "I never knew that about you." And I wasn't even going deep. It is fascinating. Now, I want to say something more about the importance of deeper relationships in the life of the church, but I've got to talk about some other things first. So we're going to put that on the shelf. Stay with me. And I want to talk about the concept about loving others and loving self. We talk about this all the time, right? That in order to really love other people, we have to love ourselves. So I thought. So I stumbled on an article recently as I was wrestling with this by a gentleman by the name of Dr. Leon Seltzer. And in 2015, he wrote an article addressing this question. And it was entitled, "To Love Someone, Do You Really Need to Love Yourself First?" Conventional wisdom about love and relationships can be more myth than reality, so I knew I was in trouble. In the article, he really sought to challenge the notion that you have to love yourself before you can offer love to other people. And in the end, what he found was, you don't really have to like yourself to love other people. You don't have to love yourself to love other people. And it surprised me. I thought, how is that possible? But in all of his research, what he found is absolutely possible to give of ourselves and not think highly of ourselves. For many years, and still in some cases of the church though, we still preach that sharing love is about giving of our entire selves, about laying down our lives for others. Now, we have been challenging in many ways that notion when we talk about love, that it's got to be both. We have to focus on transforming and learning to love ourselves while we love others. I think I'm still convinced there's a connection, and I'll get there in a bit. But in a lot of places in the life of the church, there's this idea that we have to throw our whole selves down or put ourselves on the cross to serve other people. And as I've said before, there's only room for one on the cross, and we're not called to be Jesus, we're called to follow him. The idea that self-giving love being the highest goal within the life of faith is there, but not how far we pushed it to say, love others, stop thinking about yourself. The problem is that if we're not careful to say, don't kill yourself in the process of trying to love others, that's where people can end up. Because people can be harmed when we give of ourselves until we give, and we give, and we give, until finally we get resentful. And we just withdraw or burn out. And we know in every church that I've ever been connected with or known or other folks, that if we're not careful, the church has a long history of overusing our volunteers and then watching them silently, sometimes not so silently, go out the back door. Now I'm meddling, I know. But the intent of the call to serve often is really just about rounding up volunteers. Folks to serve as volunteers at GA. At least they're calling that. We're not saying if you love Jesus, you'll serve at the GA. I will not say that. Right? That's not how that works. But sometimes that's what happens, is how do we wind up more volunteers? How do we get more people involved in all the ministries of life in the church? And when you preach that and talk about God's self-giving love, what you end up doing is the folks who are already busy and feel compelled to do it start to feel guilty that they're not already doing more, and those who don't aren't going to do anything anyway. I told you I went bad memory. And in the end, nothing changes. So some folks pour themselves out to the edge of resentment at those who aren't giving their energy as well. Author Katie Van Shajik, and I worked on that pronunciation, I apologize to her, you know I don't know her, puts it this way: love isn't only self-giving, it's also self-receiving. It doesn't just pour out, it also stands back. It doesn't only humble, it also exalts. It lifts up the lowly and sets captives free. And it raises up those who were bowed down. If we are talking about biblical love, Jesus was indeed laid in the grave, but he did not stay there. Well, she goes on, because she was challenging a homily that she had heard in the past week, and she went to her sources and norms, and she lifted up information of the teaching from John Paul II. And he said that people must learn to assert themselves as persons. And he goes on to say that part of freedom and transformation is about taking responsibility for learning to love ourselves. And in fact, he even tied that to the solidarity movement. In other words, that love is impossible if we can't love ourselves and our neighbor together. That when we fight for justice, that it's rooted, and we've said this before, in a sense of love for self and love for one another, that they are tied together. I want to go back to the Seltzer article for just a moment, because what he was challenging is this notion that our love for others should be rooted in love for self. Now, on the surface, he's very clear, and very early on, that it is possible to love other people and not love yourself. But fortunately, he does not end the article that way. What he found in the process, I found to be even more fascinating and probably even more at the heart of the gospel and what it means to be in relationship with other people, is he found most fascinating is the difference between love shared by someone who loves themselves and love shared by someone who does not love themselves. He had to get deeper in this. What I mean is, those folks who frankly aren't real happy with who they are, the negative self-talk, the fact that I will never be good enough, that I will never measure up, and yet I'm serving and loving other people to the best of my ability, and I will always fall short. Probably doesn't sound familiar to anybody. That's just me. But then you have this sense and this idea that what he found was people who had begun the journey of transformation. Actually, he was talking therapy, he is a therapist, but he was saying that as people worked on this journey of themselves, that the content and character of love that they shared with others changed. The content, in fact, of those relationships that were formed began to be deeper. Because when we begin to make peace with ourselves, it's the idea that God's love is for everybody, and you too, and me too, and you too. It really includes everybody. When we begin that journey of trying to make peace, because it is a journey, we never, I believe, fully get there. Some folks get much further down the road, but when we get to this stage, we can offer ourselves in very different and radically welcoming ways. We are set free in many ways. Not so hung up on our own stuff that we have to worry about what others think. We simply just be who we are, who God has made us to be, and to live that as authentically as possible. It does mean being more authentic as who we are as people. We're called to use our gifts, not somebody else's gifts, through our skin and bone. And in doing so, when we work this, it actually provides space for others to love themselves. It's not automatic, but it does open up the possibility. When we stop worrying about the masks that we wear, when we worry less about what other people will think of us, and begin this journey to love ourselves, we will act differently in the world. So while it may not be necessary to love ourselves in order to love our neighbor, the truth is that the relationship we build with others in the process will be more authentic and more deep and sustaining if we're seeking to love ourselves. That's true in our interpersonal relationships and our community relationships. To abide in the love of God is what that is all about. Love for us, love for others, love for God. To abide in the love of God means that we get to be part of that transforming love too. It's not okay, I'm going to fix myself and then I'll worry about my neighbor. It's while I'm thinking of my neighbor, while I'm seeking to love other people, I will not lose myself in the process. The church has too often said, give up yourself, give up your identity. But friends, God has gifted us with gifts and talents and beings and called to nourish and honor those as well. Here's the thing, ultimately. The welcome of the outcast includes the places of ourselves that we think are unacceptable. The places that we've learned to put down and to hide and to cover so deeply that we think we fooled God into not knowing that they're there. God says, come. You're welcome to. That part of you is welcome. The transformation of life and relationships begins with being grounded in God's love that we proclaim for other people. So while it may be true that we can love others and despise ourselves, maybe it's time we changed what I've been preaching to deepen your love and acceptance of another. Develop love and acceptance for yourself. This is not selfish. God calls us to be a blessing to the world. But God blesses us first. That's how it works. When we seek to proclaim justice and love in the world, look for the ways in which we deny that to ourselves. It is the depth of love to which God is calling us to live out in our own lives here in this place, even as we share it for others. Amen.